You're listening to the Happier Marriage Podcast, which is a podcast for hopeful spouses, and this is episode 18. And the title of this episode is Make Your Marriage and Your Home Happier with These Habits. This is the final episode of a 5-part episode that began in episode 14, and this episode will only be an excerpt of day number 5 in a live recording that was done. If at any point you would like to access the full course, you can do so by going to kingslegrant.com/HMS course, kingslegrant.com/HMS course, one word. In this episode, you'll identify the habits that you can create in order to have a happier marriage and a happier home. This recording, like I mentioned, was done before a virtual live audience, so you will hear reference being made to that. Also, there are a couple spots where I might reference a slide, but you'll still be able to follow along as I explain each slide. Here's what I would like for you to do at the end. Make sure that you listen to episodes 14, 15, 16, and 17. If you have not yet done so, I would highly encourage you to do that. Number 2, subscribe to the show. Number 3, leave a rating and a review. And number 4, book this podcast as your top resource for insights on having a happier marriage. And stay tuned now as we unpack this episode. Hi, I'm Kingsley Grant, a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified relationship coach, and an in-demand speaker who have been married for over 3 decades with 2 adult children. I'm also the founder and CEO of Helping Families Improve, a counseling center that caters to helping families experience the life God intended for them to have. So how do we have a happier marriage where love, respect, and deep connection takes place? That's what you'll find out as you listen to the Happier Marriage Podcast. What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage World? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage Podcast for hopeful spouses. This episode might trigger you because you may feel convicted as you realize there are things that you could be doing that you aren't currently doing. If you do feel that way, remember, this is one of the purpose of this show, right? To trigger you and then to take you on a journey, stir things up, and then take you in for a safe landing. So buckle up, and here we go. We are live on day number 5 of our Happier Marriage Secret 5-Day Reveal. And man, how time flies. I can't believe we already are at day number 5. Where did the time go? I guess I've been having too much fun doing this. And I hope you have been having fun yourself as you have joined me from day number 1 as we've navigated our way all the way through until here we are on day number 5. And I'm excited about what's coming up because I'm going to, as I have been doing, is offering you as much value as possible, giving you everything I've got. I'm going to empty it out. And today, as I mentioned in day number 4, today is putting that icing on the cake, right? It's like putting the bow on that package that we have been wrapping all week. And we've been unpacking some helpful, I hope, valuable information as you have sat with me, journeyed with me, kind of side with me. And as we worked through some very challenging moments, as someone have shared, a few people have shared how especially day number 2 was very challenging as it allowed them to really look into the mirror of their soul, right? because day number one was basically, we talked about, how we had to unpack, but we had to kind of the word I'm looking for here, unlock, right? That's the word. Unlock the secret. What is a secret sauce for us that is going to allow us to have a happier marriage? And we talked about that and discussed that at length, because I believe that the empathic communication is the singular most effective communication skill that is going to allow you and me to experience a happier marriage. And we made sure we kind of established that on day number one. And then day number two, we looked at really disruptive interactions, right? The disruptive interactions that we have in our relationships that really, really suffocate and strangle the very life out of our relationships. And that was a very sobering day, a very hard day, because we were kind of peeling back the layers and looking at what the challenges we have and how the role we play, right? Because we talked about the fact that we look out the window, and it's easy to look out the window and see what other people, our spouse, is doing. But looking in the mirror at our hearts and ourselves, that's a challenging part. And then take responsibility for that. And that was day number two. Day number three, we talked about healing, because in day number two, what happened was we looked at the wounds that were, the wounds that occurred, the pain of day number two, because of the disruptive interactions that are taking place in the relationship, and how that bring pain and wounding and insecurity in the relationship and anxiety and all of those things happened in day number two. And we're talking about how that was so painful, we have to move into the place of healing. And that was day number three, where we talk about recognizing the healing points and how to heal from wounds and pains we've experienced in, right? And then day number four was really the flip side of day number two. We talked about the fact, how do we then begin to connect deeply? How do we adjust ourselves? What do we need to do to adjust for deeper connections? And that is where we left off. And today, day number five, we're going to talk about how to sustain this, which we have started in day number three. And I said day number three because that's where the healing was. We began the healing process in day number three. And day number four was establishing a kind of protocol, a preferred future, a preferred, how do we want to see our relationship in the future? Identifying that, and then begin to implement some very specific ways of doing that. And so today we are now at day number five. So I kind of brought you through up to date, and we are going to do a recap of day number four, as we always do, and then get into our agenda for day number five. And I have something very special that I want to offer to you at the end. So hang in there, because at the end, I have something very special for you that I believe that you have been so helpful to me. I want to also be helpful to you, but I'll share with you more about that at the end of this presentation. Okay. Now, so let's go. We're going to get into today's presentation, our training today. And so we are going to talk about sustaining deeper connection. And I'll mention more about that in a few moments. So I want to mention again that this is not therapy and should not be seen as such. Yes, you're hearing from a therapist. You're hearing my experiences of my many years of doing therapy work with literally hundreds of couples, and of course, my own journey as a married individual. So I'm sharing all of that with you. So even though it's not therapy, you're getting, I believe, what I know it will be helpful to you, and it's high valued. It's not just something that, because it's not therapy, I'm going to give you second best or, second rate value. No, I'm giving you first rate. Everything I've got, I'm pouring it on in this session. So our agenda today is a recap of day number four. And then, as you can see, we're going to talk about habits. Now, I thought about putting either habits or how we were oriented, but I think habits are more a common word that we all are used to. So I put the word habits, and we're going to talk about affirmation habits. Remember, this is about sustaining, right? Keeping things going, moving forward. Now that we've laid foundation, we're going to move forward. And this is what we're going to do, is build on the foundation with these habits, right? Affirmation habits or habit. dating habit, solution habit, and practice habit, right? Those are the habits we're going to talk about in today's training. And then at the end of the training, I'm going to be sharing with you a Happier Marriage Secrets, a toolkit that I want to make available to you, a toolkit that can help you in the sustaining process. And also what's the next level or next step after all of this. So we have a lot to cover in today's presentation, and I'm going to really get into it. And so buckle your seat belt, fasten that seat, then, then do not, in an airplane, they'll say, fasten seatbelt sign is on. Now the fasten seatbelt is on. And so don't get up, hang in there, hold everything until we get through, right? Take a deep breath and don't exhale. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Please exhale. I don't want you to die. Okay, here we go. A quick recap of day number 4. Adjusting for a deeper connection. We talk about how we were right here in day number 4 in this area. And we talked about how this day number 4 is really a flip of day number 2, right? It's really a flip side of day number 2, because as you can see, we did in day number 4, we created things that were on the flip side, so to speak, of day number 2, right? We also mentioned, and this is our working definition of empathic communication that we've been using, and that is the ability to communicate your understanding of another while doing your best to share their feelings. That's what empathic communication is all about. And that's why we've been pushing and stressing and just driving home that point, because it is very, very important. Now, we talked about how this many times in our relationship, we're seeking to connect, but sometimes it's misunderstood and not seen as seeking to connect. It's seen as something else. And sometimes we misunderstand that as a controlling moment, or it is a moment to create conflict, when really it is not. Okay. Then we talked about the love currencies, and I hope you were able to, you know what your love currency is, and you've shared that with your spouse, and hopefully you found out what your spouse's love currency was as well. We also talked about facts over feelings, and we went into why the difference between facts and feelings when we are communicating what we are experiencing, and how important it is to separate and distinguish facts, fact telling over feeling telling, right? Fact telling over feeling telling, because that's what we do sometimes in our relationship. And when those are confused, it creates an issue for us. We also talked about the sacred exchange. How do we exchange information with our spouse and realize the sacredness of it when we are telling them about our feelings and our thoughts, and realize that we are responsible and only us know what we're feeling and no one else does. And we're responsible to communicate that and not leave that to anybody to somehow speculate or assume and then don't get it right. So it's a sacred moment and we need to treat it as such, right? Now, we're about to get into today's. Before we get there, you had this assignment to do yesterday in day number 4. I want to quickly ask, did you find out from your spouse what their love currency was? And if you so, number 1, put hashtag live if you're watching live. And I say that because, of course, you're watching live right now. You say, well, duh, I'm watching live. Yeah, but somebody's going to watch this on a replay. And so I'm going to ask them to put hashtag replay, and I want to see who watched live and who watched replay. So go ahead, and if you could put in the comment section your hashtag live, right? And also put hashtag yes if you have found out what your spouse's love currency is, and if they know what your love currency is. Put hashtag yes. So hashtag yes if you found out, or even if you knew ahead of time and you just sort of confirm that and you said yes. Put hashtag yes if you have already found out what that is. Go ahead and put hashtag yes in the chat. So hashtag live and hashtag yes. Let me see. I'm waiting for it to see a little bit more of that. I know some more people are on the line. So go ahead and type in hashtag. Don't be afraid. Hashtag let yes. Hashtag live. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Some people have done that. Great. I'm glad you guys follow through and at least are able to transact now with your spouse with the love currency that you have found out. Now, we're going to talk about then sustaining deeper connection. And as you can see, I have the image on the screen is that of a plant, right? A very young plant in earth, in soil. And obviously, it is not yet matured. And I chose this for a reason because where we are right now in our roadmap is very in the early stages. We are basically kind of replanting, right? We're replanting some things. We did that in day number 4, and we're going to sustain the life of it in this presentation today. And sustaining the life requires, watering, requires nurturing that soil. So sustaining deeper connection, you probably can basically guess we're going to talk about the things that nurtures the growth of the relationship, but not just nurtures, but sustain it so it can bear great fruit, and you can reap the benefits of that fruit that you have planted. So that's why I chose that. So imagine as we get into this that you're holding your relationship as a young plant, right? And you are responsible. So here's a key. You are responsible of keeping that plant alive. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't say I don't have a green thumb because I don't plant too many things. But the things I do plant, I do take care of. I just planted a tree in my backyard, a soursop. Imagine a soursop tree. Pray that it grow and pray that as I sustain it, as I nurture it with water and fertilizer, let's pray that it does grow. And if it does, and I'll let you know, and I may share that with you if some fruit is come on the tree. But it's my job to make sure that is kept alive. Now, I had to water it, and I noticed because the rain hadn't been falling a couple of days ago, my wife said to me, the plants you have in the backyard, it looks like it's wilting. I'm thinking, wilting? Oh no, I've not been good at that. So I went out there that very same day and watered it. I just soaked it down because I know it needed some water, and I neglected that. How many times in a relationship, why the plant, the relationship is wilting? Because it's not sustained. The things we have done planted a relationship, but we're not nurturing it, right? And now we have healed, and now we have adjusted. We need to find ways to nurture our relationship and imagine it as this plant, and you and your spouse are responsible, right? But don't point to him or to her and say, did you water today? You're not water. No, you are responsible to water and just to also fertilize that soil as well as your spouse is now, right? So here is the sustaining. The first habit we talked about was affirmation. Affirmation. Now you can see on the cup, it says, see the good. See the good, right? Here is what I find many times in relationships. How often does a spouse only hear when they do something wrong, right? I wouldn't say very rarely, but less often do they hear when they're doing things right, right? And so that spouse may get frustrated because they only hear, you only see when I do something wrong, but all the time I've been doing all these things, but you never say anything, right? Does that sound familiar? Maybe not in your relationship, but do you know of other relationships where that happens, right? Where it's like you hear someone says about their husband or their wife, and they only talk about the things that they're not doing, but yet they overlook the things that they do. And somehow that husband, that wife is saying, I guess that I'm the things that I'm doing, I never hear anything. Good job. I never hear appreciation. It's surprising in some relationships that how they take each other for granted. It's amazing where someone would say that if I got something from my spouse, if my wife handed me something and I just take it from her hand and never say thank you, or I never say I appreciate something as she does. And I've heard this literally. Why do I need to say thanks? Why do I need to say thanks? It's my wife, it's my husband. And many times it's taken for granted. I mean, I remember I sat at you know, an event, okay, and I sat at a table and I saw in this couple, right? They were sitting there as well. And I just noticed because, I'm pretty observant when I'm in settings, whether public settings, I observe things because I learn people's interaction and their body language and how they interact. And in my head, I make up stories about what I see and possibly guess what's going on. And I remember seeing this couple, and one of the couple spouse asked for something, the other spouse handed to that person, and I was waiting to hear thank you, but nothing. This person just took it and kept on going as if nothing really happened. I'm thinking, wow, wow, did that just happen? No thank you, no appreciation. But my friend, we need to see the good and not overlook these small things. So when your husband or your wife does something that you notice, it registered with you, see the good, affirm them, right? You want them to know that you saw that. Why? Because they will do more of that. What you want more of is what you need to affirm in your spouse. And that's why the definition here of affirmation is the action or process of affirming something or being affirmed. So what happened is you want to see the good. Try to, even if you have to look through a magnifying glass, look through that. So sometimes you can just say, you know what, today I'm going to not only use my love currency, my spouse's love currency, I'm going to go one step further. I want to catch him or catch her doing something, quote, good, right? So they are just, for example, you came home, your wife or your husband, depends on who's at home, made the bed or washed the clothes or cooked dinner or, bought a gift, whatever it is they did. And you noticed something in you at that time felt good because you saw it. But happens most time you may feel good, but you don't say anything. You don't say anything. And that's pause is like, wow, I guess I keep on they just keep on moving because they may not be doing it for any applause. But my friend, one thing we all as human beings need is positive reaffirmation, right? We need positive input, positive deposits. And so if we want to nourish our relationship, that plant, one of those things we need to be looking for is when to affirm our spouse and get in a habit of affirmation. Let it become the new norm in your household. Let it become something that your household is known for, affirming each other, because that is life giving. Okay. Now, the second habit that I want to encourage is called the dating habit. Right? It's a dating habit. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is. You want to get in the habit of having dates with your spouse, whatever that may look like, right? And it's something that is not just haphazardly done, or it's something that is randomly, if it happens, it happens. No, because let me show you the definition of dating. It says to establish or ascertain the date of an object or event. Establish that. So my question is, do you have an established dating habit with your spouse? Do you have that? Now, I want to attest to this, or just a disclosure, and it's an honest disclosure. In the early years of my marriage, right? I would say not the early age, but years, but as time we get familiar and start having kids and so on. For many years, this was not true of my relationship. I am, honest disclosure here. For many years, it was just a haphazard thing. If it happened, it happened. It was not given a priority. Everything else was given a priority, but this was not. But if we're going to nurture our relationships, if we're going to nurture the plant, then that plant needs a dating habit where it allows you and the relationship to have what I find to be a time it can look forward to, where it takes you away from the humdrum and the day-to-day activity. It breaks that up. So if you want to have some conversation about something, right, but you don't go on a date to have, conflict conversation or a nuclear conversation. No, this is a time to step away from the hustle and bustle. And so when you have a dating habit, it's another way of nourishing that relationship. Remember now, this is about sustaining deeper connection. Most times after dates or, your whole system, it feels like a reset. I know when we had kids in the early years of our marriage, it was challenging at times because we had young kids, right? And I know it's not easy, especially if you have no family around you can depend on, or they may have their own, issues. So it's a challenge, and I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but maybe right now it cannot happen every week or maybe once a month. Maybe it's for a few hours. Maybe it's an hour here in the morning, whatever it might look like. You want to establish. Remember, here is establishing the date of an event. And this event happens to be dating. And so what happened is I realized that for me and my wife, we had for over last several years, we just figured out what a day that worked for us, right? We had to kind of play with some dates. And what happened is that our schedule was different. Our schedule was so off here and there. So we had to fine tune until we find a time that worked for us. So we have picked a day, and on that day, it's scheduled, meaning that everything else happens around it. Emergencies occur, like for example, today, this week I've been doing this 5-day challenge. So obviously we had to step aside from that. But these are the exceptions. It's not the norm, it's the exception. This only should happen as an exception, not the norm. And so, yes, someone said it can be challenging, but we have to be yes, very, very, so true. It is intentional. Again, like I mentioned, my plant, I have to be intentional to get out there every single day and actually make sure that plant is being nurtured, right? A question here is, why is dating important culturally? How does a person reconcile this concept of this is more of a Western concept? Okay. And you're right. It's a Western concept to some degree, but I find that if we want to take it back to even, I look at my relationship with God, right? I need to establish date moments with God where I spend that time just between him and me, having conversation, developing our relationship, nurturing our relationship, right? Because I can see it as a date. Remember, it's called dating, but you can call it whatever it is, as long as it's seen as establishing the date, a specific time for an event, so you can nurture that event. So remember now, it's not so much what it's called, it's more about the intention and the purpose of it. The purpose is to nurture, or to find a way to create a habit that will nurture and make it very specific, right? It's not a haphazard. It's not just and I remember, even though we may say it's a Western thing, I know that when I was in Jamaica, and it was the early years of my life there, we would want to date a girl, and I didn't have any much money or cars, but I made specific time to date. So it may not have like the same ring as a Western culture it does, but it happens in every single culture. Every single culture. I mean, of course, there's somewhere the spouse is picked for you and you're introduced on the day of. So I'm not saying it happens universally, but I'm just thinking that if we're going to think about a relationship that lasts, because I find that these relationships that are not intentional and it's forced upon somebody, what happened is it just don't last. And if it does last, it's last because of certain specific things that are in place. If you just break that, you could your life could be taken, right? So in some culture, I think that is not happening because that person have no choice. That person have no choice, and they have to just kind of just be there. So that person doesn't have to worry about nurturing that relationship because that person is not, it's almost like a possession. It's my possession. My wife is my possession. And so in that male dominated culture, they don't care about even dating because why should they? Because that wife is in submission and better stay no matter what's happening. So I think we're looking more of a freer society. This is what I'm talking about here in that regards, right? Beautifully said. Love the analogy. Thank you so much. Yes. So you're establishing or ascertaining a date because it's nurturing aspect of that plant, as I mentioned in the very first slide that I showed, right? Now, the next habit I want to talk about is a solution habit. So many relationships are problem focused, problem saturated, and it looks at problems all the time. But a problem is not going to get better by looking on it and talking about it over and over and over and over again. Once you recognize there's a problem, the next thing is to think about is a solution. And so I encourage couples to start thinking solution focused. Yes, we have a problem, but what is the solution to the problem? What do we need to do to fix that problem? What we've been doing this week, basically this 5 days, is talking about how are we going to move from our number, right? Whatever number that was, to the next number. We're not going to move from the number you chose on day number 1 to the next number by focusing on problems. It only keeps you where you are stuck or keeps you moving back, right? It keeps you going back, not forward. So we need to be solution focused, which is focus or future oriented, future related. So when you begin to think about, we have a problem here. For example, in communication, where couples will say we're not communicating properly, then what happened is that's a problem. The question is then, what's the solution? Well, it may be seeing a therapist, right? Going to get professional help, or like we are doing here, going through this training and creating that empathic communication as that one skill set, that's singular, most effective skill set to help us navigate. Because it looks, once you become solution focused, your brain will help you find solutions to the problem, because every single problem, guess what, has a solution. There's not a problem that does not have a solution. Sometimes the solutions may take a while to find, or sometimes it may require a bit more work to get to it, but it's there, right? Because it would not be called a problem if a solution was not there somewhere. And so I encourage couples, if you're going to nurture that relationship, that you start looking for, what are the solutions? What solution do we need to bring to the table? And I mentioned to couples many times, I said, mutually, if you can externalize a problem and see it as something that's coming against the relationship, and not point finger as it's your problem. And it's, I hear so many times, that's your problem. Couple, that's your problem. And I get it. I understand. There are times when, of course, we have to take responsibility for our problem, right? And someone said, yep, that's so true. You're right. We have to take responsibility for our own issues. But the more you point fingers and say, that's your problem. But my question is the problem affecting the relationship? Even though it's his or her problem, is it impacting the relationship? And the answer is yes, then we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. The relationship has a problem. And therefore, my statement or encouragement is, what if you as a couple come together to now try to solve the problem and see it as a relationship problem, and we want to fix it? How much more easier and much more helpful that would be than if I constantly say, you have a problem, it's your problem, you got it, you go fix it. Well, I get it. I get it if you're frustrated. I get it. It's hard. And it's not easy what I'm saying, right? So what I'm saying are some of the things I'm saying is simple. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? There's a difference there. It's simple. What I'm saying is not easy. But here's what I say often. Anything that's important and worth something should require some hard efforts to make it happen, right? And I say everything we do today that now we find as easy never started that way, right? It always starts out to be hard until it becomes easy. And sometimes it's simple, but it starts out to be hard. And one of the things I jokingly say, but it's true, I said the only place that easy comes before hard is in the dictionary. Let that one sink in for a moment. The only place that easy comes before hard is in the dictionary. In life, it is the right way it's supposed to be. It's hard before easy. That's how life is all about. Life is not about easy first. If it matters, if it's important, it takes time. And that's why it's simple, but it may not be easy. So what I'm saying, these solutions, these habits are simple. It may not be easy. But if you're going to have a relationship that sustain what we've been working on from day 1 to day 4, then, my friend, hard should not be a problem. Because the question is, it's hard either way. What you're experiencing, if you're not experiencing growth and healthy relationship, how easy is that? That's not easy. It's hard. So the question is just which hard are you going to choose? And I find solution is a way to go. And that's a habit I want to suggest to you. Now, solution is a means of solving a problem or dealing with a difficult situation, right? A means of solving a problem or dealing with a difficult situation. That is the goal. You want to be solution focused. And I think going back to when my wife mentioned to me about the plant in the backyard that I planted, my soursop tree, when it was wilting, we had a problem. But I could say, man, look at that soursop tree. It's wilting. Oh, or I could grab the hose and put some water on that plant. And guess what I did? I grabbed the hose, solution, pour water on that plant, solution, boom. The plant is like, here we go. It's perked up already because it wanted some water. So I had to find a solution. Okay. Now, the next one is practice habit. Now, how many of you have heard practice becomes what? So put in the chat what you've heard. Practice becomes what? Go ahead. Put in the chat what have you heard. Practice becomes blank. What's a blank? Practice becomes blank. What have you heard? What have you often say? What have you repeated? Practice becomes dum 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 dum. It's not a test. Let's curious to see what you've heard. Practice becomes someone says perfect. Someone says permanent. Someone says second nature. Practice becomes perfect, permanent, second nature. Okay. I think the answer is, drum roll, practice becomes permanent, right? Practice becomes permanent. Because if practice really became perfect, then guess what? We should have perfect situations, perfect scenarios, perfect habits by now. How much more practice do we need to ever get perfect if we've been practicing, right? Someone said improvement. So we have perfect, permanent, second nature, improvement. But I want to say it's practice becomes permanent. When you practice a habit over and over and over again, it becomes permanent because what your brain is doing, your brain is creating, right? It's creating what we call a neural pathway. So it's simply saying it's a pathway in the brain that says, okay, now from this point on, we're going to travel that path over and over again. And so it becomes second nature, as Alvin said, yes. But it's second nature because we have It's a permanency that's created. And so now is a pathway travel. So practice does become permanent. And so these habits we're describing, why I put this one here towards the end is because I want you to realize that what we described earlier, right, about the affirmation habits, the dating habit, right, the solution habit, those are going to be require practice, right? And sometimes you're not going to hit the bullseye. You're going to miss, like I mentioned yesterday in day number 4, how sometimes we step on each other's toes because we're trying to find the rhythm. We're trying to find what really works. And so by practicing, we're going to eventually get there. Going back to the dating idea, dating habit, we had to practice what day and time worked best for us, right? And it was okay that it wasn't we didn't hit this target the first time around or second time around. And that's why I mentioned in day number 4 yesterday, I said, do take 1, then take 2, and take 3, as many takes as necessary until you get it right. And once you get it right, you rinse and repeat over and over again. You keep on doing that. And then you're able then you're now going to be able to find that to become your new habit, your new norm. We're creating new norms. Remember now, we're coming from day number 2, right? Day number 2 was a day of challenging day. We're coming from that place through the path of healing on the roadmap. Now we're getting into where we're adjusting. So in the adjustment process is what we want to do more of, right? This is what we now is going to cement and solidify, right? This practice, these habits, so they become second nature, as Ivan said, right? But I would say it becomes permanent. It allows the brain to lock in, because what happened is pleasurable, is getting the results, the feedback, the energy, and the brain says, aha, this feels good. Let's lock it in. Let's lock this baby in. And once you've locked in, it now becomes a habit. So practice simply means perform an activity. Okay, here we go. Or exercise a skill repeatedly or regularly in order to improve or maintain one's proficiency, right? To become proficient or the permanency stage, we need to perform an activity or exercise a skill repeatedly or regularly until it becomes second nature, until it becomes permanent, until it becomes a path in our brain that we don't have to think about it. It happens so quickly. Imagine what I love to use this as an analogy. Imagine walking across a patch of grass area of your yard, right? Or anywhere else. Imagine that grass area, and you walk across there day number 1. You look back, you don't see much imprint left behind. The grass is okay. But imagine walking across that same grass area day 1, day 2, day 3, until day 4. As often as you walk across that patchy area, what you begin to see is the grass is now beginning to give away. A path is beginning to, in the grass is a path is beginning to carve out. And the more you walk on that grassy area, that spot is going to be carved out until it's now become a path. That's how it happens in your brain. It's like that. That's how a neural pathway is carved out in your brain. When you start a new habit, the brain says, okay, let's walk across it over and over. And so the brain is actually doing the walking for you over and over and over again and carving that pathway. So now you operate by that without thinking, because now the brain have carved that in for you in that grassy area of the brain, so to speak, is now make it permanent. And now you have to do less thinking, less work. Boom, you're right there, right? So that's why these habits are so important. Now, we're coming to the place now, which I want to we start wrapping things up here, because we've traveled from here, right? From day number 1, unlocking the secret. And we got into day number 2, identifying disruptive interactions. And day number 3, we talked about the healing from the day number 2. Yesterday, day number 4, we talked about how to adjust and how to mutually carve out a preferred future, right? That's where we now are building on that by sustaining deeper connection. These habits are going to allow you to make this home a happier home. Make your relationship a happier home, because it's impossible to be doing these habits we're suggesting and not have a happier home, right? And that's why it's now the thing that's taking you from where the number you chose, whatever number you chose. This is just an example. We just chose 6 as a to demonstrate what's happening here, to get us to our 7. So whatever number you chose, these things are what's going to take you from the number you are to the number where you are, your number you want to get. And this is where you're going to get a happier, right? So where the number you chose could be happier. And hopefully by now you're moving more towards happier, right? So that is what the whole idea behind a happier marriage roadmap is all about. And what this 5-day reveal was to get you safer home, where you can now begin to build on the foundation and let that plant begin to be nurtured and begin to grow and bear fruit. That's the whole purpose of this and the objective of this 5-day reveal. And there you have it, my friend. I hope this episode encouraged you and gave you some hope. If you are wondering what the tools are that were mentioned or how to get them, you can access them at kingslegrand.com/HMS course, one word, kingslegrand.com/HMS course. And that's also one word, HMS course. Okay. Remember, this podcast is designed to move you closer to a happier marriage. And each week we seek to find one more way to get you closer to your heart's desire. With that in mind, make sure you give the show a rating and a review by clicking the appropriate link that will take you there on the platform you're listening to the show on. Also, subscribe to the show so you'll be updated on all new releases. Remember, if you're interested in the full course, which consists of 5 videos, you can access it at kingslegrand.com/HMS course, kingslegrand.com/HMS course, and the link will be in the show notes as well. Do it today. Don't delay. My friend, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face towards you and give you his peace both now and forever. Amen. See you next time.